Hey, welcome to our Youthwork Plus podcast. I'm Becky Lawrence, your host, and I'm joined today by our special guest, Gemma. Gemma and I have known each other. We were just trying to figure out how long we've known each other because we know we met as teenagers. Neither of us could remember how old we actually were when we met because it was a long time ago. We're going back 25 years or so. So that's a long time to have to remember something. But yeah, we know we met as teenagers. We had some mutual friends that we kind of met through. And we've been kind of friends since then and bumped into each other in various youth work and Christian circles since then. Yeah, Gemma, why don't you give us a little bit of a background of who you are, where you are now, and then we'll go back onto some historical stuff with some of the other questions.
Yeah, great. So, hello everyone. I currently work for Youthscape, which is a national charity that supports youth workers, particularly in faith-based settings and churches through resources, events, research and training. But we also work with young people on the ground in our base town of Luton, and I lead our work with young people in Luton.
Amazing. And Gemma, how and why and when did you get into youth work originally?
So this is, going back quite a long way. I would say probably nearly 20 years ago. So I first got into youth work when I was living in London. So I moved to London when I was 18. I grew up in Luton, moved to London when I was 18, and I was going to a church there. And I remember that I think I must have been about 21 or 22. So one of the ladies in the church got up and she basically said, "We're launching a youth club. Does anyone want to help out?" And I thought, I suppose I could help with that. At the time, I never thought that there was even a thing, but I was like, yeah, I'll help with that. So I started getting involved, started volunteering on Friday nights, doing our youth club, and absolutely loved it. Absolutely loved it. Kept volunteering for years. And eventually, I became the youth worker at that church and decided that I wanted to do youth work as my job. And so I then went and studied and did a graduate diploma in youth work and ministry at Oasis College, and kind of went on from there. So it's been a long time.
Yeah. And how has your kind of journey been since that initial moment of your first youth work job? Because God-led change moved you along the way.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I started out youth work in a very faith-based setting, in a church setting, and I absolutely loved it. But I think I guess, started working a bit more with community young people during the work that we were doing, like we did youth clubs on estates and that type of thing. And kind of as we did that more, I started to get a real heart for young people in the community, young people who didn't yet know Jesus, young people from really vulnerable backgrounds. And so I've kind of done a lot of faith-based work, but also a lot of community youth work over the years. And I think how God has kind of led and changed me, I guess that He's just made me really well, I don't know if really compassionate is the word, but a lot more compassionate about young people who are really vulnerable and from backgrounds that are really difficult and from challenging circumstances, who are going through difficult situations. And I think He's grown my compassion in that area just as time has gone on, and I guess given me a real heart for young people who don't know Him. Absolutely love working alongside young people who've grown up in the church and supporting their faith development and that kind of thing. But yeah, really, really have a heart for those who don't yet know God and introducing them to Him and showing them His love.
Yeah, good journey. And what do you think has been like the biggest lessons you've learned from youth or kids work along the way?
I was thinking about this. I was like, this is a hard question.
Yeah.
I think one of the biggest lessons I've learned is that God is at work in young people's lives, and He doesn't need me to meet with them. He doesn't need me to reveal Himself to them, but He chooses to partner with me. He chooses to partner with us. I've had so many, I guess, humbling moments where I've been talking to young people about prayer or different kind of elements of faith or things about God. And often I'll be so surprised at them saying like, oh yeah, I already do pray, or oh yeah, I've already thought about this about God, or yeah, like just some kind of thing where they've had a little, I guess, encounter with him in some way. And I just find that encouraging, but also humbling that God is, yeah, he's at work, he's moving, he's impacting young people's lives, and we get to be part of that journey. And that's really exciting. But it also then doesn't depend on us, and we can kind of rest a little bit more in knowing that, yeah, God is moving anyway. So I think that's what I've learned.
Yeah, that's a really good lesson to learn, isn't it? That God is at work and we are involved in a little bit of that. Like it isn't all on us, which is a huge relief sometimes when we realise that. And have you got any like particular ministry highlights?
Very many ministry highlights. It's so hard to choose a few. I think when I was a youth worker in London, I had some really incredible, I guess, opportunities to see young people go on kind of a real faith journey from not knowing Jesus at all to being baptised. I remember we started a street dance class on an estate in Brentford in West London where I lived, and a young person started coming along to that who, didn't know Jesus at all, had never even really thought about God, and just through kind of engaging in that and then getting involved in our youth ministry and going on a bit of a faith journey, he then went and got baptised. That was really, a real highlight for me to kind of see him go through that whole journey and then kind of get to that point. And then another moment is I actually was at the National Youth Ministry Weekend a couple of years ago. That's a conference that Youthscape run for youth workers in Birmingham in November. And I saw one of the young people that I'd worked with in London there. And she's now a youth worker somewhere else in the UK. And she said to me that she got into youth ministry because of me. And that was like a massive highlight. That was really significant. And then there's been so many other moments. I remember here in Luton getting the opportunity to kind of pray with young people and share prophetic words, and when you see like breakthrough of young people who are really, I guess, frosty to you at first, like from estates or whatever, and then they kind of warm to you, and then they start coming on to faith-based stuff and start warming to God, things like that. It's just so many moments which are real highlights. So it's really hard to pick just one or two, but I feel like I've just given loads. But a lot of highlights.
Yeah, those are really good highlights. And in terms of like what youth work you're doing now, you've mentioned a little bit about your role with Youthscape. To unpack that a little bit more, and also involved with your church, I think, as well, aren't you, with youth work? What kind of stuff are you doing there as well?
Yeah, so at Youthscape, we work with young people in Luton in quite a varied way. We work in schools and we do assemblies and short-term projects, support young people with their mental and emotional well-being. We run a couple of projects which help young people, like prevent young people from disengaging from education. So there's a few kind of schools-based projects that we run. And we also run projects in our building, and we run 4 nights a week an after-school drop-in for young people from year 7 to year 13. And in that space, young people can come, and the idea is that it's a safe space and they get support from youth workers and they get to build healthy friendships and relationships. Just a really positive, welcoming, friendly environment. And we also provide a hot meal each day for the young people. And that's kind of the space there where we can build long-term relationship as well. And we really get the privilege of working with some young people for a really long period of time. I remember in July we had a graduation for young people who were 18 and moving on from Youthscape. And there was some young people there who we'd known since year 7. And so we've been working with them for 7 years. And I've actually been at Youthscape for 7.5 years. So I'd seen them all the way through secondary school and college. And so that was really cool. And so, it's really great to be able to do that in that space. And I guess that's a space where we can be a bit more explicit about our faith and kind of share that a bit more and invite young people into some of our more faith-based programs. And then we run something called Luton Unite, which is in partnership with local church youth ministries. And that's a twice a month gathering where young people from all the different church youth groups and from Youthscape come together, explore faith, worship together, have fun, and also go a bit deeper and ask questions and pray for each other and discuss and worship together. So yeah, that's kind of what it looks like in a little bit of a nutshell. So it's really varied, get to do so many different types of youth work, which is really fantastic, and I absolutely love that about it. And yeah, like you said, I am involved in my church youth ministry. So we have actually just launched an after school club on a Thursday afternoon, which I'm not directly involved in, but have kind of been part of like helping get that off the ground. So that's really cool. And then we run stuff on Sundays during the service. And so, yeah, I get the privilege of kind of walking alongside some of those young people who've been in church for a long time and want to go a little bit deeper.
Yeah. And what ages do you work with at church?
It's year 7 to year 13 again, but I think most of the young people are probably towards the younger end. So I think the oldest is probably about year 10.
Okay. Yeah, great. How did your kind of journey happen? So obviously you were in London working, and then did you always want to come back to Luton and have a youth work job, or how did that kind of whole journey work for you to end up being back in Luton, hometown, doing youth work again?
Yeah, I didn't expect to come back to Luton, I will admit. I think that was a bit of a curveball that God threw my way. So, yeah, like I said before, I was working for my church as a youth pastor and then did my graduate diploma in youth work and ministry. And kind of after I'd done that, I kind of really felt God calling me to, I guess, go out into the community a bit more and like work with young people who weren't connected to church. So I started doing some detached youth work for my local council and worked for them. And while I was doing that, the council, they put the youth service under review, and they were basically thinking about getting rid of it. And I was kind of like praying about what to do. I was like, God, do you want me to stick it out here until the end? Do you want me to see what happens? Do you want me to move on? Like, what do you want me to do? And then out of the blue, I saw an ad for a job at Youthscape, which was to manage our after school drop-in at the time. And so I thought, that is my ideal job. Even though I'd never planned to come back to Luton, it was my ideal job. And what I haven't said is that when I was a teenager, when I was a young person, I used to be involved in the things that Youthscape, which was then called LCET, used to run. So used to run lunchtime clubs in my school, used to run summer camps that I would go to. And so there's always been a bit of a connection. And so when I saw this ad, I was like, oh, that looks really exciting. So I applied for it, and here I am. I got the job and I moved back to Luton and decided that this is where I wanted to be. So yeah, I've been here for 7.5 years now, so it's been a while. Love London, loved it, absolutely loved being there, but yeah, it was the right time to move back home.
Yeah, and definitely called back to Luton.
Yeah, definitely.
And how about your role? Like, is your role still the same as when you first came back to Luton with Youthscape, or is it changed?
No, my roles evolved and developed. I've had a few different roles while I've been here at Youthscape, all within the local team, so the team that does on the ground youth work. So I now lead the team. I'm in charge of the strategy for the work that we do and how we deliver it, and managing the team and making sure we deliver all the things that we need to do. So gone on a little bit of a journey, but I've learned a lot, and it's been exciting to do so many different things.
Yeah, great, thanks, Gemma. And this is the part of the interview where you get to ask me a fun question.
Excellent, I love that.
So far away.
Okay, my question for you, Becky, is if you could only do kids or youth work with one age group going forward, what would it be and why?
I think the answer would be one or two things, and they're wildly different. And I'll tell you why. So I think if it had to be with young people, it would be like year 11, year 12, year 13, that sort of older end bit of the youth bracket. And I think I like that age group because they're sort of almost formed as like little human being. They're almost adults. Most of their kind of formative and formation stuff has happened. I think they're a lot more willing to, because of that, they're more confident. and they're more willing to kind of talk to you and maybe go a little bit deeper with some questions and kind of faith dynamic stuff. I also love doing like one-to-ones with that age group, and I feel like you can dig deeper within that context as well, rather than some of the younger age groups. When you try and do one-to-one type stuff, you end up just sitting there for most of the time because you don't want to force stuff out of them, and you're asking stuff that's trying to draw things out, but sometimes they're really unreceptive. Whereas I feel like this older age group of 16, 17, 18, they were a lot more willing to answer pretty much every single question you give to them, and just give it a go. And when I say they're more formed, they're not like fully finished though either. Like there's still a bit of wiggle room there in terms of their growth and what they're willing to learn and be approachable and accessible to. And then on the other side of that, I think children's wise, like having a daughter now myself who's 2, I love that age group as well, just because like they're the exact opposite. Like 2 years old, they're like so spongy, like they pick up everything, and they come out with new little things all the time, things that they've somehow learned, and you're kind of like, where have you picked that up from? So I think it would be one or the other, which are 2 extremely opposite ages. But yeah, I love both of those two little age brackets. So yeah, it'd be one of those, I think, for me. How about you?
I actually don't know. I think that's so hard.
It's a hard
I'm
one.
probably going to go like right in the middle and be like year 9, because they still have kind of that playfulness of some of the younger age group, and that sense of like fun and just wanting to mess around and have a laugh. But they're also starting to become mature enough to have some of those deeper conversations, ask questions and go a little bit deeper. So yeah, I'm going to go right in the middle.
Yeah.
But I think it's actually really hard. I love all youth age. I also do love children, but I don't know if I'll be able to work with children.
Yeah. Yeah. I always, now that my daughter's at nursery, I always, when I'm dropping her off, I'm always like, I'm working at the other end of the spectrum really with young people. But if I wasn't doing that, then maybe I would go into like the other end of the spectrum. And that's what made me think of working with 2-year-olds. My perception of youth and children's work has changed as well as I've got older. Like I always would have said I was much more of like a specialist. I think I still am, but I'm much more willing and likely to dabble in more children's work now than I ever was before. Whereas before I would have been like, that's not my thing. Now I'm more, I'm more open and accessible, I think, to working with pretty much any age group. Because I think essentially they're all the same in that they're little human beings who are open to exploring all sorts of things and can teach us loads too. I think they're all pretty magical little human beings. Okay, next question for you is, what area of youth, kids or family ministry are you the most passionate about, and why?
I think I would say community youth work, and particularly drop-ins and detached work. I think that in those spaces you kind of tend to connect with some of the most vulnerable and hardest to reach young people. And I guess it's also a space where they set the agenda a bit more. I think sometimes when we do youth work, I guess particularly in Christian settings, we might go in with a session plan or something that we want to achieve or something that we want to get through, which is, absolutely great. I really love the unplanned and then young people setting the agenda type work, where you never know where you might end up going in the conversation or what you might end up talking about, or even what activity you might end up doing. And I think in drop-ins and detached work, that kind of tends to happen a little bit more. That agenda is set by them. So I really enjoy that. I just enjoy that spontaneity.
Yeah. I think obviously with detached work as well, you never know really what young people you're going to get.
Exactly.
Whether you're going to meet brand new ones or see some that you know already.
Exactly.
So there's that whole spontaneity area of it as well. And Gemma, why do you think engaging children and young people in church is really important? This is something I always ask. But yeah, it'd be good to get your take on it.
Yeah, I think it's important, I guess, from two different angles. I guess for the sake of the young people, I think church is a space where you can really find a home and a community for life, which goes beyond your youth clubs, beyond having to leave somewhere when you're 18. I think that's quite a rare thing to find for anyone, actually. I think, there's not always a space where you can find that community or that home in life. I think that for young people, that's really important in particular, and having that support kind of long term and ongoing. And of course, it being a space where they can meet with Jesus and encounter him and grow in faith in him, kind of alongside others. I feel like, yeah, of course, that's really important for young people. And I guess from the flip side for the church as well, I think that young people, they bring something that can really encourage and challenge us in our faith. I think that sometimes if we've been in church for a long time, we get very used to the way we're doing things, or even very used to, I guess, the way that we see God or how we engage with him or whatever it might be. And I think that sometimes young people bring questions about God that really make us think about, oh yeah, why do I believe that? Like, what? Yeah, where does that come from? Is that something that I've actually thought about, or is it something that's just developed based
Yeah.
on the community I've been part of or the people that I spend time with or whatever? They can really challenge us in our understanding of who God is in a really positive way. And I think that as I've journeyed with young people over the years, I think, yeah, my theology has changed in some ways, not significantly, but I think slightly based on some of the things that I've seen, through how God's been at work in their lives and, things that they've asked and things that we've discussed. And I think there's real power in that, and we can learn a lot from young people. So, yeah, I think both of those things.
Yeah, really good. Thanks, Gemma. And is there any way that people can get involved in what you do? Obviously, people can pray for you and the work that you're doing. Obviously, if they're local, perhaps there's opportunities to volunteer and get involved with Youthscape, or tell us how people can get involved in what you do.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, like you say, if someone's local to Luton and they're keen to get involved in volunteering in our drop-in or in some of our other programs, or even with some admin stuff via our website, there's ways to get involved in that. Like I said, Youthscape is a national charity, and we do provide resources and training and research, which youth workers might find helpful, and those can all be found on our website too. And there's also events that people can get involved in. We've just had the National Youth Ministry Weekend, but that will be running again next year. And the idea is that that is really a resource for youth workers. And then we also run Satellites, which is a big summer festival for young people, which youth workers can bring their youth groups to. That's in the summer. So that's a really great way to get involved as well. All of this stuff can be found on our website, youthscape.co.uk. So yeah, there's a few ways to get involved.
Yeah, thank you. Amazing. And what advice or encouragement would you give for the youth and kids leaders that are listening?
I found this a hard question because I feel like there's so many things I could say, but I think I've picked two things. I think that the first one is to really look after yourself. I think that I know for myself, and maybe this is a trait of youth workers, like you just want to fix every single need. And as soon as a young person comes to you and you realise that they're going through something, like you want to try and fix it, you want to try and do everything you can. But if we try and do everything, we burn out, and it's too much. We can't do everything. God is the only one who can come and who can change some of these situations anyway. And so I think it's really important to just be really aware of our own capacity and say no sometimes, and look after ourselves. Then that's so that we can keep going for the long haul, because I want to be a youth worker till I'm old and grey, and so to do that, I need to look after myself. I'm speaking to myself here as well, by the way, because I can be really bad at this. And then I think the second thing is kind of linked. It's to find your tribe and your support system. I think sometimes youth work, like what we carry, can be quite heavy, and it's a profession where you don't necessarily get the same like clinical support as some other people who work with people with need. Like we don't necessarily get, like supervision that's with like a psychologist or whatever at time, things like that. You might not get
Yeah.
therapy, like all of those things. And so you can be carrying some like big safeguarding stuff or things that young people have been sharing. So it's really important to have that support system around you. Obviously appropriate, like with safeguarding, not meant to be sharing stuff about young people with others, but yeah, have an appropriate support system. And when I say find your tribe, I guess mean connect with other youth workers as well. I think that youth work can be quite a lonely job, especially if you're involved in youth work in a church, whether you're a paid youth worker or a volunteer youth worker, you might be the only person. And so it is important to, try and connect with other people who are doing a similar thing. Maybe in your town, maybe if there's not other people in churches in your town doing the same thing, maybe trying to come along to something like the National Youth Ministry Weekend to connect with other youth workers, just so you can see that your context and what's going on and what you're finding challenging isn't weird. Like other people are going through the same stuff as well, and hopefully that's encouraging to have that support from other people. So I think that's really important to be able to keep going for the long haul and to look after yourself as well.
Yeah, really good advice. Thanks, Gemma. Will you allow me to ask a bit of a wildcard question, which I haven't prepped you for?
Yeah, go for it.
It just occurred to me that obviously we're both young people. We were both young people growing up in a town that has a bit of a stigma attached to it, Luton. And I wanted to pick your brains a little bit on that and ask you whether, like, how much of an impact you think that has on like young people that you're working with now, and your kind of reflections being a young person yourself who grew up in a place like that. And yeah, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I do think it has a really big impact on the young people that we work with. And I think it had a big impact on me too. I think I might not have realised it at the time, but I think I always wanted to get out of Luton. And I think that's what I find with a lot of young people that we work with. A lot of them, when we talk about the future and, career aspirations or things they want to do beyond school, most of it is, I want to get out of Luton, I want to go somewhere else. There's nothing to do here, or it's not safe here, or X people are here, or whatever it might be. And I think that's really sad. I'm not saying it's wrong for young people to have big aspirations and to want to go and make something of themselves. Absolutely, I think that's important. But I think when you feel like you can't do that in the town that you grew up in, that feels sad. And I think also it makes young people feel like they can't thrive within the space where they live. They can't thrive within this town. And I guess when coming to youth work projects and things that we might be running, I guess there is almost that lack of hope then of being able to change, or for things to get better, or for growth to happen, or whatever it might be. And so in some ways you need to try and undo some of that, which we're not going to be able to fully do in the time that we have with young people. A lot of that is down to God. And I guess you're also fighting against stuff that is really ingrained in families as well, that kind of view and that kind of perspective too. So yeah, it does pose a bit of a challenge, but I think that coming back, I've realised how much I actually do love Luton and how many good things there are here. Like I love the diversity of the town. I love that actually within the church there's a lot of unity, even though there's so many different churches and denominations. Like churches are really willing to work together. I think there are a lot of positive things about Luton, and so some of my work then is to try and help young people to see that, and also to see how they can feed into making the town a better place. I think that's part of it as well. So just a few thoughts and reflections. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it totally does. And I think it's really important, isn't it, to like understand the context within which we work in that kind of that way. I think you're right, it does make a big difference, like how we approach it as well as individuals, because like if we're not proud of the place in which we live or the place in which we were born, then that reflects on the work we do and the young people's thoughts themselves. Whereas if we are the kind of people who even go against the grain and say like we love the place, like that's sometimes that can be quite a unique perspective, and adds another dynamic and another kind of different opinion that we're thrown into the mix, I guess, which can be really powerful, I think.
It can, yeah, to speak against that kind of ingrained belief that kind of comes from so many different places, to speak against that. And I guess that's what we do as Christians, isn't it? We kind of
Yeah.
speak against or live in a way that is against the way of the world. And so, yeah, it correlates a little bit there.
Yeah, totally. And I was sort of the opposite to you, because I think I never really wanted to leave Luton. As a kind of 18, 19-year-old, had an intense passion for the place where I'd grown up. And so I imagined myself leaving. Even like I'd applied for university and stuff and was looking at going away, because there was a university in Luton, but it didn't have that many courses, and nobody really went there who'd come from Luton. I feel like maybe there's more of a sense of that now, because it's developed a lot since when we were 18. But yeah, at the time there weren't a lot of courses. I think they were quite specialist-y kind of courses, not necessarily anything that I wanted to study. And I was looking at going away to university. I wasn't looking forward to leaving the town, which is quite a weird thing for a place that like isn't looked upon very highly by people. Yeah, and then like God called me to Milton Keynes, and I've been here, and I feel like this place has its own kind of uniqueness as well, because it's quite a new city. Like it's only 50 years, over 50 years old. Like there's not a lot of people who have been here since the beginning. There are some, but there are a lot of people who have come here for like housing or work, or who have come here from other places. So that gives like a whole different context, I guess. And then there are pockets, like big pockets of deprivation here. I guess more than I was sort of expecting for like a new place. You kind of expect coming into like a city that's fairly new that there wouldn't be such big pockets of deprivation here, but there are. And like some of the young people I've met through some of the youth work I've been involved with, like I was quite shocked to hear like them haven't even been to the city centre.
Oh wow.
Which like you would expect, just take for granted that like people who live here go there. I remember doing something in a school once, and we were showing them like different pictures of Milton Keynes landmarks. Kind of, I can't remember what the context was of this, but we were showing them different photos of Milton Keynes landmarks and kind of pointing out like what those places were. And like some of them didn't recognise some of the landmarks within their own place where they lived, because they hadn't been to the city centre, because they hadn't left their little estate where they lived, been anywhere or done anything really, which was kind of shocking to me. But yeah, all of it is useful, isn't it, for the context in which we work, and understanding some of those things.
Yeah, definitely.
Thanks, Gemma. Thanks for letting me throw in that little wildcard question at the end there.
No worries at all. Really,
I think hopefully it will get people to think about the context within which they're working as well, and like what perhaps those young people that they're working with, children they're working with, what context they're in as well. Thank you so much for coming today.
Thank you for having me.
That's all right. It's been lovely to pick your brains and hear a bit of your journey, and hear some of your wisdom. Your highlights were amazing. I wish we could have had longer.
I picked the best ones for you.
No, they were great. I wish we had longer to unpack all of them.
I know.
And I just want to say thank you to all of our listeners for tuning in. Obviously, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, comment, get in touch if you want to. Do obviously tap into the provision and resources and facilities that Youthscape offer. Don't forget to go on their website to kind of find out some more about that if you're interested. Obviously, they are local but also national, as Gemma mentioned. And there's lots of things on their website that might be useful for our listeners. Also, obviously, if you've got anything you want to talk to Youthwork Plus about, get in touch with us as well. And we hope you've enjoyed listening. We hope you've been encouraged. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.